Lena Moorcroft thought she was settling in for a quiet weekend, wrapped in a blanket with nothing but Netflix for company. But when a strange, unlisted film appeared in her recommendations, its thumbnail showing the inside of her own apartment, she realized the story playing on her screen wasn't T-fiction at all. And with every passing second, the ending was getting closer to her. It started on a quiet Friday night when I was scrolling through Netflix, looking for something different to watch. I wasn't in the mood for anything cheerful or familiar, just something to fill the silence in my apartment. Outside, the city was unusually still. Even the faint traffic hum that usually drifted in through my window was missing. My small living room felt like a sealed box, the only sound coming from the low whir of my laptop fan as I browsed. My eyes were getting tired of the endless carousel of thumbnails, each one brighter and more polished than the last. Then, something caught my attention. It was a title I didn't remember ever seeing before. The thumbnail wasn't like the others, it was blurry, out of focus, and seemed to have been taken through a smudged pane of glass. It had no actors listed, no release year. The description beneath it was strange too, just 4 words. Watch till the end. No genre, no synopsis, nothing. I thought it might have been some experimental short film or a hidden Easter egg Netflix sometimes slips in. My cursor hovered over it for a few seconds. I told myself it would probably be boring or some obscure indie art piece, but there was a heaviness in my chest I couldn't explain. When I clicked play, the screen stayed pitch black. At first I assumed it was buffering. I waited, tapping my fingers against my desk. Then a faint, almost imperceptible static began to hiss from the speakers. The blackness slowly brightened into a grainy image. The quality was terrible, like it had been recorded on a cheap camera decades ago. The shot was of a dimly lit room with peeling wallpaper and no furniture except for a single wooden chair in the corner. Someone was sitting there. The figure was hunched forward, head bent low, hair hanging in loose strands over their face. Their arms rested limply on their knees. I couldn't tell if they were breathing until I noticed the slight rise and fall of their shoulders. The camera didn't move. The person didn't move. Seconds dragged into minutes, and nothing happened. Then I noticed the shadows. They weren't right. They seemed to shift and stretch unnaturally across the floor and walls, even though the dim light in the room stayed constant. The shadows grew longer, curling upward like tendrils toward the figure in the chair. My stomach tightened. I leaned closer to the screen without realizing it. The figure slowly lifted its head, but not toward the camera. It turned slightly to the side, as though sensing something just out of frame. The grainy quality made it hard to make out facial details, but I thought I saw its mouth moving faintly. There was no sound except for the steady static in my ears. Then, for a single moment, the image went dark like a blink, and when it returned, the figure was gone. The chair was empty. The static swelled in volume, drowning out my thoughts, and underneath it I thought I heard another sound. A slow, wet breathing. It was close, too close, as if it were right behind the microphone. The camera jolted violently as though something had bumped it, and the view tilted toward the floor before cutting to black. I stared at the empty screen for several seconds, half expecting the video to continue. Instead, my Netflix menu reappeared. I sat back, trying to process what I'd just watched. My first thought was that it was some sort of found-footage horror short, designed to unsettle the viewer without any context. But then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The thumbnail for the video had changed. It was no longer the blurry, smudged image from before. It was sharper now, clearer. The scene it showed wasn't an old, peeling room anymore. It was a hallway, a narrow hallway with cream-colored walls and a single light above. My hallway. I turned in my chair to glance at it, expecting to see nothing unusual. It was exactly as it should. Bedroom empty, still. Yet when I looked back at my laptop, the thumbnail seemed different again. The hallway was the same, but now there was a figure in the background, just at the edge of the shadows. It was standing perfectly still, facing the camera. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the changed thumbnail. The figure in the image was small and distant, almost swallowed by the darkness at the far end of the hallway, but I could make out the faint outline of a head tilted slightly to one side. My chest felt heavy, and for a moment I told myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe the hallway in the picture only looked like mine. Maybe it was just some generic hallway a set designer had built. I pushed the thought down, but it clung stubbornly in my mind. I turned in my chair to look again at my actual hallway. It was exactly the same as in the image, cream-colored walls, a single flickering light above, and the faint scuff marks on the floor where the carpet met the baseboards. My building wasn't particularly old, but it had that faint smell of dust and something stale that never quite went away. Nothing moved in the shadows, yet my eyes lingered there as if I expected something to take shape. When I faced my laptop again, the strange video was gone from the Netflix homepage. In its place was another one, same title, different thumbnail. This new image was even more unsettling. The perspective had changed, showing my hallway again but closer, as though the camera had moved forward several feet. The end of the hallway was sharper now, the details clearer. I felt a pulse of unease in my stomach. The rational part of my mind whispered that it had to be a clever horror marketing stunt. But the irrational part, the part tightening my throat, told me something was wrong. My laptop didn't face the hallway. It shouldn't have been able to capture that angle. Still, I clicked on it. The screen filled with distorted visuals, the image slightly bowed outward as if filmed through a fisheye lens. The camera was moving, showing the patterned carpet of a floor that looked exactly like mine. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, and with each one came a faint scraping noise, as if something heavy was being dragged along with the person holding the camera. The view tilted upward toward a door at the end of the hall. My door, the brass numbers on the frame matched perfectly, and a faint distorted rumble began to roll through my headphones. Low enough that I could feel it in my chest, more than I could hear it. The door handle twitched once. My breathing slowed without me meaning it to. The camera didn't stop. It pushed the door open, the hinges letting out a soft groan. The perspective shifted to show my living room, captured in dim light. There, in the middle of the frame, was me. I sat exactly as I did now at my desk, laptop open, posture slouched slightly forward. My clothes matched. My hair was in the same messy state it had been all day. But the version of me in the video wasn't moving. It wasn't even breathing. Its eyes were locked forward, glassy and unblinking, staring at the screen in a way that didn't seem alive. The static in my headphones grew sharper, needling into my skull. I leaned closer despite the sick feeling in my stomach, studying the frozen, lifeless reflection of myself. The image twitched once, distorting for a split second. And in that moment I thought I saw something behind me in the video, a shadow, tall and thin, just barely out of focus. Before I could make out more, the screen cut to black. My Netflix menu reappeared as if nothing had happened. My hands were trembling slightly. I told myself to shut the laptop and step away, but instead I glanced toward the darkened space behind my chair. My apartment was silent. Nothing stood there. Still, it took effort to turn my back to that emptiness again. On the homepage, the video had disappeared entirely. My eyes scanned the list of recommendations and watch lists, but there was no sign of it. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like the air in my apartment had grown heavier, thicker, as though the video had left something behind. Then I noticed something new, a faint reflection in my darkened laptop screen. For just a moment, it looked like there was someone standing at the end of my hallway. I shut my laptop quickly, the reflection vanishing as the lid closed. My pulse was hammering in my ears, but the moment the screen went dark, the apartment seemed even quieter. I stayed there, frozen, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional creak of the building settling. The air felt thick, almost damp, and the thought of turning around to look at the hallway made my skin crawl. I convinced myself it was just a low light and the shine of the screen playing tricks on me, but that uneasy weight in my chest didn't lift. After several minutes I opened my laptop again, telling myself I'd just put on something familiar, something light, to distract myself. Netflix loaded normally at first. Bright thumbnails for sitcoms and movies filled the screen. But when I scrolled down, I noticed a new row I'd never seen before. It was labeled Continue Watching. I rarely used that feature, and when I did, it usually contained half-finished episodes of shows I'd abandoned weeks ago. Now it had only one title. The title was my full name. The thumbnail was pure black. No image, no movement, just a dark square against the rest of Netflix's glossy, colorful covers. A deep coldness spread through me, and I stared at it for what felt like minutes. My hand moved on its own, dragging the cursor toward it. A part of me screamed not to click, but my fingers didn't listen. The video started instantly. The first thing I saw was the outside of my apartment door, shot from a distance at a low angle. The graininess of the footage made it look almost like security camera video, except the perspective was wrong. The camera was too close to the ground, like it was being held by someone crouching. It was raining in the video, the droplets soft and steady, but what unsettled me was that it wasn't raining here, not yet. The rain sounded muted, distant, as if it were falling in a sealed space. The camera moved closer to my door, each step painfully slow. I leaned forward, my skin prickling as the frame filled with the door's surface. The peephole and brass numbers were identical to mine. The camera stopped. For a long stretch of seconds, nothing happened. Then, faintly, I heard footsteps from the other side of the door. Slow, deliberate, almost in sync with the beating of my heart. My throat tightened. I could see the door handle tremble ever so slightly, like someone was testing it from inside. The rain sound faded abruptly, and the image on the screen warped colors bending inward before snapping back. Suddenly, the view was from inside my apartment. The camera was behind me now. I could see myself sitting at the desk, hunched over my laptop, exactly as I was in that moment. My reflection on the screen within the video was dim, but something about it was wrong. The me in the video wasn't moving, not even breathing. The camera edged closer, the view narrowing until the back of my head filled the frame. I wanted to turn around in real life, to look behind me, but my body felt locked in place. My palms were slick with sweat, my heartbeat erratic. Then, in the top corner of the video frame, I saw something else, just a sliver of movement in the darkness of the room behind me, a shape, tall and rigid. as if someone was standing perfectly still in the shadows. Before I could see more, the screen went black. I stared at my own faint reflection in the dark screen. It was just me, pale and wide-eyed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows in the background of my apartment were deeper now, heavier somehow. My breathing felt too loud in the stillness, and every creak of the building sounded closer than before. I forced myself to shut the laptop again, but even with it closed, I couldn't stop glancing at the hallway. The light above it flickered once, briefly, before going still again. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the light still on, staring at the ceiling while my thoughts twisted in endless loops. Every time my eyelids grew heavy, I would hear something, a faint shuffle, a creak, the distant sound of what could have been a footstep in the hallway. My phone stayed in my hand the entire night, screen dimmed, as if having it nearby would somehow keep me safe. By morning, my nerves were frayed, my head pounding from exhaustion. I told myself I needed to get out of the apartment, to clear my head. I moved quietly, almost like I didn't want to disturb something, and packed a small bag. When I opened my front door, my stomach dropped. Sitting there, resting neatly against the threshold, was a package. It was small, unmarked, and the cardboard was damp as if it had been left outside in the rain, but it hadn't rained here. Not once. For several minutes I just stood there, staring at it, my mind caught between the urge to slam the door shut and the compulsion to open it. Eventually, curiosity won. I picked it up and carried it inside, setting it on my kitchen counter. The cardboard was soft in places, like it had been wet for hours. I tore the top open carefully. Inside was nothing but a small black flash drive. I didn't own anything that needed one anymore. My stomach churned at the thought of plugging it in, but deep down I already knew I would. A part of me felt as if I had no choice. I sat down at my desk, my laptop still closed from the night before. My hands felt stiff as I plugged the flash drive into a port. A single file appeared on the screen, Watch MP4. The video began without me pressing play. It opened with a shot of my bedroom, filmed from a low angle in the far corner. I wasn't in the frame. The camera panned slowly toward my bed, the movement unnaturally smooth, as if it were gliding rather than being carried. The blankets on the bed shifted slightly, even though no one was in them. The sound in the video was faint but wrong, like a distant muffled heartbeat mixed with a faint static. From beneath the bed, something moved. It wasn't fast, but deliberate, as if it wanted me to see it. Two impossibly long, pale arms slid out, elbows bent at strange angles, hands dragging across the floor. The skin was the color of candle wax, thin enough to show the faint blue of veins beneath. The fingers were too long, each one ending in something that looked more like bone than nail. The arms paused, almost tasting the air, before retreating back under the bed. The blanket stilled, the camera remaining fixed on that spot as if waiting for more movement. I sat frozen, my breathing shallow, unable to look away. Then, without warning, the scene cut. The camera now faced the outside of my building. Rain fell heavily, streaking the lens, and a lone figure stood in the street, looking up toward my window. The darkness and blur made it impossible to see a face, but I didn't need to. I knew it was the same figure from the first video. The figure didn't move. The rain beat down harder, drumming against the microphone, but the sound felt far away. After several seconds, it raised one hand slowly. Its arm hung in the air for a moment before the hand extended, pointing directly at the camera. The screen went black. I ripped the flash drive from my laptop, my heart slamming against my ribs. My apartment felt smaller somehow, like the walls were leaning inward. My gaze kept drifting toward my bedroom door, and I hated that I couldn't shake the image of those long, pale arms reaching out from under my bed. It was still daytime, but every corner of the apartment seemed darker than it should have been. I left my apartment that afternoon without looking back. I took the bag I had packed earlier and went to stay at a friend's place across town. Their apartment was bright, cluttered, and filled with the noise of the city outside, a perfect distraction from the oppressive stillness I had left behind. I avoided using my laptop entirely, telling myself I just needed a few nights of normalcy to shake the paranoia. For 2 days, nothing strange happened. I started to feel foolish for how far I had let my fear spiral. I told myself the videos must have been some kind of elaborate, creepy ad campaign or an unlisted project accidentally pushed into my Netflix feed. The package, the flash drive, it could have been a prank, maybe from someone in the building. I repeated these explanations in my head until they started to feel almost convincing. On the 3rd day, I returned home. My apartment door looked exactly as I'd left it. The air inside was still, smelling faintly of dust and something metallic. Everything was where it should be. I unpacked slowly, trying not to notice the way my own footsteps seemed to echo a little too long in the empty space. My laptop sat on the desk, closed, waiting. I almost didn't open it. But I told myself I needed to prove to myself that nothing was there anymore, that it was just a normal device. My gateway to the same safe, mundane streaming service everyone else used. I booted it up, connected to Wi-Fi, and opened Netflix. For a moment, everything looked ordinary. The homepage was bright and full of shows. I scrolled past comedies, documentaries, new releases, then I saw it. At the bottom of the screen, separated from the rest of the rows, was a single title. The thumbnail showed the front door of my building, framed perfectly, the photo sharp and clear. The title read in all capital letters, "Final Episode," no description, no genre. A cold tightness gripped my chest. My hand hovered over the trackpad, and despite every instinct screaming at me to close the laptop, I clicked. Video opened in complete silence. The camera showed my apartment, the shot taken from somewhere behind me. I could see my own back as I sat at the desk, laptop open exactly as I was sitting now. The figure from the first video stood in the corner of the room, unmoving. It was taller than I remembered, its head almost grazing the ceiling. The lighting was wrong, warped somehow, making its limbs seem stretched, its body slightly bent at odd angles. Its face was just out of sight, hidden in the shadow that clung unnaturally to its form. In the video, the figure began to move toward me. Each step was silent, yet I could feel them. The air in my real apartment seemed to grow heavier with each one. The me on the screen didn't react, didn't turn, didn't move at all. The camera didn't tick-tock or shake, it stayed fixed as the figure reached the back of my chair and stopped, its head tilted slightly, as if studying me. Then one pale hand reached forward, hovering inches from my shoulder. That was when I noticed something horrifying. In the video, my hands were resting on the desk, but here, in the real world, I couldn't feel my fingers at all. They weren't moving. I couldn't even be sure I was breathing. The figure's hand finally touched me on the screen, and in that instant, the entire image distorted violently, the colors tearing apart before collapsing into black. The video ended, but my Netflix homepage didn't return. My laptop screen stayed dark. In the reflection, I saw my own wide eyes staring back at my only. The shadows behind me were no longer empty. Somewhere in the apartment, the floorboards creaked.